Hello, welcome to that Town Country Quilt Block of the Day 2016. It's so exciting to actually get started on this quilt. It seems to have been a bit of a build-up, but we're ready to go. So by now you should have your pattern all downloaded, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video. Just as a little matter of interest, the videos will only be available to you because you're participating in the Block of the Day and receiving the pattern. They're not going to be up for the general public. This is for you as part of the Block of the Day process now. You will have received and probably or possibly watched the sample block video that I sent out recently. That one is available to the general public so that they can get the idea of what we're doing, but as I said, from now on it's going to be for participants only. So keep an eye out. The link will be in your pattern each time that there is a video. There won't necessarily be a video every time, but certainly when there is, I'll tell you all about it in your pattern so that you'll have the link. So in your pattern you'll have the general information, and there's some other bits and pieces that may have come with it as well. That runs through all the appliqué, which I showed in the sample block video, exactly how I'd gone through the appliqué process. So I won't be showing you that every time or anything. If you need a little refresher, you can either re-watch the video or you can read the general information. There'll also be a chart of some of the stitches. These are the stitches that I use if I'm doing hand embellishment embroidery. You may have other things that you would like to do, of course, and that's fine. But just as a little sampling, I've given you some information about some of the more basic stitches that I use. I'm not an embroiderer, generally speaking. And then you've got your patterns. So each block will have a colour photo, you'll have your layout, you'll have your appliqué shapes and things. And so what I'm going to do today, because I've shown you how to do all the actual appliqué, I'm going to show you how to do the little star embroidery, even though you have got the information on the sheet. And I'm also going to run through block number 6 of the actual stitching. So what we're doing with this quilt is we're starting in the centre of the quilt. So here is the quilt, and you can see, and it's called the Town and Country Quilt because we're going from the town out to the country. And we're going to start the quilt in the centre, and it's night time in the city, so it's dark, it's a little bit dreary, you don't see a lot of colour when it's night time. So the fabrics and things appear slightly dismal perhaps, but if you imagine a city at night, it can be a little bit grey. If you want to make your city bright, of course that's up to you. So what I've done, instead of appliquing all the little windows and bits and pieces in the city, is I've actually just done it with outline stitching, which I have done free motion. So I'm going to show you block 6, which is this block here, all the actual stitching, just to show you how I've done it, and the other blocks will be done in the same way, so you'll be able to work that out. And the other thing to keep an eye out for is the corners, because the corners, and it's all, the pattern shapes and things are all here. So this is a corner block here, this is this little one here with the tree in the corner. You'll notice that there's a little corner, so that actually turns the corner. So we're working in the square. Each time we do a background change, it goes right the way around as a square round of the quilt, and each corner brings it around each time so that it's all in that square. So all the corners, if you look going out, have got that little corner, usually a little patch of grass in the corner, because I think that all corners in the city, country, wherever you are, should have grass on them. And as this is my town and country, that's the way it's going to be. So I'd love it if you make it your own town and country, do your own embellishment. Bear in mind, if you're going to quilt it later, if you're sewing things on top, like buttons or little bits and pieces, that they can get in the way of the quilting, and you may want to think about putting them on a bit later. And by all means personalise it, make it your own town, your own place, with things that are relevant to you. I've just gone through some fairly general things that I think you see from the town out to the country. Of course not everything, and in different countries you see slightly different things. So as I said, by all means personalise it to your own interests. Otherwise, just go with my town and country. So I'm going to show you now how to do some of this free motion stitching. And I've already done my basic appliqué for that block, but I thought I'd just show you the free motion stitching. So on your pattern piece, as well as the photograph, I have given you the information, like there's a full-size diagram of the actual block with the stitching lines, even often shown just in little dotted lines where you'll be doing your stitching and things. So all the information is there. If you want to transfer that onto your appliqué shapes, the stitching over, that's fine, or you can just do them free motion and have them slightly haphazard. Most of mine are slightly haphazard, and so I'll just run through a little bit how I've done that here. So first of all, I'm going to start with this tall one on the whatever that side is, my left. It's got a doorway here, and we've got 3 circular windows going above, and I have done the circles and joined them on together. If you don't want to, you can stop and start if you don't like that little joining line, but often on these fiddly little things it's just as easy to keep going and the line doesn't really stand out, but of course that's a personal choice. One thing to remember with your applique is don't forget that you are going to lose 1/4 inch across the bottom wall, all round the block of course, but in particular across the bottom because we've often got shapes on there. So any like doorways and things, make sure you allow for that 1/4 inch to come off the bottom, that you're not losing, and you haven't done really short doors that you're not then happy with later on because you've lost half the door. Of course you may have short people in your town and that's entirely fine, or maybe there's hidden steps down to the door, who knows. So as I said, I'm going to do this taller one on the end first. So what I'm going to do initially is just my door, which is just an outline. So I've got a darker thread on my machine, I'm set up to do free motion, and I'm going to start and just do a little doorway. So a couple of stitches on top of each other will usually lock it for you, and also I'm in the seam allowance anyway, so it doesn't kind of matter so much just there. And we're just going to stitch all the way up, across the door and back round again. Now if your thread isn't standing out quite as much as you'd like it to, so that you can see it clearly, you can then just go back over that line and do a double line of sewing. And slightly, sometimes the stitching goes slightly off, but that also can be part of the charm of the quilt. So we have a door already into our building. Woohoo! I'm going to do those little circular windows next. So again, just free motion. I'm going to start at the top of a circle and I'm just going to go right the way round. And yes, I'm going to go round each circle twice. Now I've got to the top of the window and I'm going to just do a little line across to the next one, because I don't want to keep stopping and starting all the time. Now I've got to wriggle back up to the top there to get to the next one. And I did a couple of stitches on top of each other, so that will lock off, so that now I can just trim away close to my stitching. If you want to pull the threads through and tie them at the back, of course that's another option. I tend not to do that because I've locked it off and I find that that's sufficient. So there we have doors and windows in a tall building in the city already. Oh, if only building was that quick normally. And so I'm going to keep going. I'm going to do the middle building next, and then I'm going to do this clock tower last so that I can show you how to do the clock. So we'll just get this. Now there's 3 doors across the bottom of this building here. Now, will I go back over? Yes, I might go back over those. I'll just do this and I'll talk again. I'll just mention about the stabiliser. There seems to have been a few questions about stabiliser. I have got this product called Antique Cotton Wadding that we use in New Zealand. It's a cotton product. I've talked about it in the newsletter that you will have downloaded, and I've mentioned it in the needs list and things. It's not essential to have a stabiliser on the back. It certainly isn't essential to have this particular one. However, I feel especially if you're going to do free motion stitching, it will help your block sit a whole lot better. It's not necessary. You can do it without it. I just feel it's better with it. So it is a personal choice thing. Don't get too panicky about stabiliser. Just know that I feel that you get a better result. I get a better result if I do it with some stabiliser. Now there's a little block of windows in here that we're going to do. And because I'm free motioning, some of my things are slightly wonky, but for me that's not a problem. If that's a problem to you, then you may have another way of doing it. So now I've gone across and done the cross member of the windows now. I'm going to now start working backwards and then go out side to side to create the little window panes in there. So don't be frightened by the free motion, it's a lot of fun. I'm just going to go around a second time here. If you haven't done a lot of free motion, I recommend you give it a go. Try it out, you might be surprised. It's not as hard as you might think. There's seems to be an element of fear about free motion. It isn't a fearful thing. It does require a little bit of practice to get the control, but it's actually allows you to have a lot of fun with your sewing machine. Okay, so now we've got the second building done. Now I'm going to do the third building. You can see it's not taking very long to do all this. So I'm going to just do some lines across here. On the pattern here you'll see that we've got some little lines going across and we've got these ones going up and down. So I'm going to start doing the cross ones, then I'm going to do the up and down, then I'll come up and do the clock. Going to come in now and I'm going to go down here and I'm going to come back up this side here, and then if I go back down that side, every so often I can do a little cross to indicate a little window or something that's happening there. And I'm going to do the same here and then come up. Down. Oops, forgot my bits. Come back. It's that easy. If you forget a little line with this kind of stitching, because it is slightly wonky, you don't have to panic too much. I don't panic. You may panic. There's no need to panic. Right, then we've got to come across a top now and do another little line so fairly close under the roof, and then we're going to do that little clock. So I'm here, I'm going to come back into the middle near enough, and I'm going to do a circle for the clock face. Well, something that vaguely resembles a circle, I think. Yes, my clock is definitely not round. Okay, so I'm up here now, and so now I'm just going to, I've gone around the circle twice, I'm just going to do some little marks in to indicate where the numbers would be. So I'm right at the top, so I'm just going to come in and out. And then at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and you should be halfway around the side now for 3 o'clock. Back right up to 12 o'clock, so you might want to just finish off there, and then we'll come and pop the little hands in the middle. So that wasn't so hard, and mine is definitely slightly wonky, but because of the style of the quilt being slightly wonky, that's not a problem to me. Okay, so now I'm going to come into the middle. If you're not sure where the middle is, you may want to pop yourself a little marker for when you're coming in, because somehow when you get it under the foot of the machine it always looks a little bit different. And what time will we have it? We've got it on just after 8 o'clock there, so maybe we'll do the same here. So I'm going to start in the centre, And again, I'm going to come out and I'm going to make a little shorthand with a little arrow point on it, double over it so that it's clear, back to the center, and then bring your other hand. And again, this one is slightly longer, this is your minute hand, and then do a little dot but stitching in the middle just to indicate the center of the clock there. Now, just snip these and show you what I've done. It's not perfect, but it's a happy clock. So there we've done all that embroidery stitching, or whatever it is, embroidery. It's a form of embroidery, the free motion stitching like that. My lines are slightly wonky because I'm doing it standing up here. However, I would be very happy with that block in my quilt because that's the style of the quilt. There is some windows. Oh, I haven't done the roof up here. Should we just quickly do those and then we've finished it, and then I'll show you a little bit of stitchery for the stars. Okay, so we've got some windows here. I'm going to come in from the side and I'm going to go right the way across, and I'm going to come back, and then I'm going to stitch like a little attic window up here, and I'm going to put a little cross member in it, and I'm going to come back and do the other line. So really, one of the tricks with free motion stitching is to keep stitching, not stopping and starting all the time. You don't want to have too many ends if you can avoid them, but you will have a few because we're just working on so many small bits here. So there's my block. I will give that a little quick press afterwards, and it'll just sit nice and flat, and that block is all done now. So the other thing I just want to quickly show you is I've hand embroidered on the quilt here some of the little stars just because it's a nighttime sky, and your instructions or suggestion of how you might do that stitchery is in here. So what we're going to be doing is this little star stitch here. So I'll just do one of those just to show you in case you're not normally an embroiderer. Well, I think an embroiderer would say this is probably not really embroidery. A stitcher, how's that? So I've got my thread coming up already, and I'm just going to do a stitch a little distance away, and then I'm going to come up sort of halfway between and the distance out, so that you're going to make a little cross. So that's going to come across there, so you come down there. So it's really just sort of a cross stitch over itself, and then I'm going to come up halfway roughly between the two stitches on the diagonal there and come down over here. And yes, I'm not a stitcher, so my stitches often get wonky here as well. And I am working upside down. I'm sure that's got something to do with it today. So there we've got like a little star, and I'm just going to do, so what I do is, and because again I've got the stabilizer, that helps with hand embroidery as well, because it just gives you a little bit more stability on these thinner cotton fabrics that we're using. I'm just going to do a little back stitch on the back in the stabilizer, and that helps hold it. But then I'm going to carry that through and do another little back stitch where I'm going to do the next star, and the stabilizer allows us to carry that thread across. The little back stitches help stop the thread from pulling up. So now I'm going to bring my needle out here again, ready to do another little star. So we'll just go in there, and I will just continue on doing a few stars in the background, just because I think it's kind of nice to have little stars at night. And you can see it doesn't take very long to do this. It's great to have some little projects with some little bits and pieces to do by hand. I'm mostly a machine sewer, so it's quite good to have a little bit of handwork occasionally, especially if you go to little groups and things, and it's easier to take things ready to do by hand. And then I'll do my little back stitch again, and I can just carry it through, ready to do my next star on the front there. So I think that is fairly clear how we're going to do all that. You can continue on doing that, but I'm hoping we've covered everything you need to know for part one. It will have told you at the beginning on your block here how many blocks to cut from this background. I've given you a little bit of information there for the cutting. For the 9 blocks, there's 9 blocks in the centre that are all on this same dark background, and then we're going to change background, and I'll tell you about that when we get to those blocks. So this time you've got 7 blocks, so it doesn't quite finish the centre bit. You'll get those in the next, and so it goes on 7 blocks each time. So thank you very much, and I look forward to going through this with you throughout the rest of the year.